This is all about love. It's about our health. It's about our community.
Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He has trampled out the vision where the lightning and swift sword. He has loosed the faithful lightning of its terrible swift sword. His truth is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on.
I just want to say I love you.
We love you too. We love you.
We're out here downtown today celebrating the completion of 4 projects that were voted on during our Downtown Decides participatory budgeting process. And we're riding a bike from one location to the other to do a ribbon cutting at each of the 4 transportation projects. Some of the projects we're celebrating today are new bike lanes in the Central Business District, the painting of an island in the middle of the road yellow so people can see it, and some new trash cans in the Sweet Auburn corridor. This is the direct result of citizens participating in this program. This is the first time we've done participatory budgeting in Atlanta, and it puts the power directly in people's hands on how tax dollars are spent, and we're just thrilled with the response and the success of the program so far.
Chastain Park is the largest park in the city of Atlanta. This is the last piece of the Chastain Park path, and it's taken over 25 years since it began, and we are here at a groundbreaking to celebrate this last piece getting ready to start. You know, the phrase, it takes a village, well, it certainly takes a village here. There have been lots and lots of organizations who have helped make this happen. I think there are over 500,000 people and probably about 250,000 dogs that use the path each year. It's an asset that is used by many, many people, from young people walking along to people on bikes to people running and exercising and folks coming after work to enjoy a stroll in the park. And the path has really been a catalyst for revitalizing the park, and so lots of park partners here today with NYO and the horse park and the pool, and it's a wonderful time to celebrate together.
Today we're here for an unveiling. We're unveiling an urban farm, one of the biggest urban farms that will be based here in District 3. And we're here to address the food insecurities that this district has faced for decades. And I think what's so innovative about this idea is that we've partnered with Washington High School, with Greenleaf Farms. We're going to be partnering with the American Heart Association to bring together an ag STEM program that's going to cultivate new, young, fresh blood in urban farming that's going to really be focused on how we can move together as a community in addressing food insecurities within Atlanta. It is time that we take action in our own hands and we start cultivating innovative opportunities like an urban farm, like a grocery retail model where we can pipeline produce into the communities and really help lift up and support our residents.
Good morning, everyone. This is Councilmember Jennifer I, Chair of the Finance Executive Committee. It is now 10 o'clock on Thursday, May 13th, 2021, and today we are starting day 2 of the City Council review of the Mayor's proposed fiscal year 2022 municipal budget. I'm joined by my Vice Chair, Howard Shook of the Finance Executive Committee. I think so far this morning, we also have Councilmember Andre Dickens, Councilmember Joyce Shepard, and Councilmember Matt Westmoreland on the line with us. And I believe there will be other council members who cycle in and out as their schedules permit today. For today's schedule, the Atlanta Police Department. I'm a bit out of the Foster family. The Atlanta Police Department will start off at this first hour slot, followed by fire. Then we're going to break at noon and start back up at 1 with corrections. Then the municipal court at 2 p.m., the office of the solicitor at 3 p.m., and close with the office of the public defender at 3:30 p.m. An electronic copy of the budget book and all presentations can be found under the proposed fiscal year 2022 budget tab on the Finance Executive page of the City Council website. At the completion of each topic, council members will be able to ask questions. Please use our internal application to note if you wish to speak. And with that, I would ask that Interim Chief Bryant introduce his team. Chief Bryant, you there? All right, I think we're having a little technical issues, so just a few more minutes.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Can you hear me?
Good morning, Chief. I can hear you.
Great. Rodney Bryant, Chief of Police, City of Atlanta. I am joined by many of the financial team, Darlene Jackson, Yolanda Pascal, Chief Gibbs, Captain Wagaman, Deputy Chief Shearbaum, and Leon Taylor. We'll be presenting our budget. I'll start off with if you go to the first page, I'll talk off the summary of our current operation. Our general budget, the first slide shows our, is it slide 2? Okay, if you're on the current, on the summary of the current operation, our first block shows our general budget trending, showing an increase from 2021 to 2022. Areas of operational areas are field operation, criminal investigations, community service division, contingency operations division, support services division, and strategies and special operations. Strategies and special projects division. At the next block shows our breakdown of our general funds, which, as you can tell, 86% of our budget goes to our personnel services, 4% goes to purchases and contracts, 2% to supplies, 2% to capital outlays, 4% to interfund charges, and then another 1% to our other financing usage. Our key metrics here at the Atlanta Police Department are our Part 1 crime, our license and permits, code enforcement, response time, hiring and retention, and our overtime tracking. If you go to the next slide, please. The next slide shows the summary of current operations for our E911 funding budget trend. There's a slight increase there as well. The breakdown is 58% goes to personnel services, 40% to purchases and contracts, 2% to supplies, giving us a total of $20,893,577. Our highlights there, the pay increases that were critically needed for us to maintain adequate employees in the E911. We believe that pay increase has helped stabilize what we were seeing earlier in the year. Technology upgrades, hiring and retention, as I stated, the pay increases have really helped in that space. We were seeing a number of our 911 dispatcher leave and that has begun to slow. And then our CAD upgrade system has been beneficial as well. Next slide, please. Slide 4. Slide 4 shows our FY21 highlights. As many of you all are aware, we were we were also operating on the COVID protocol. However, our PAL athletics continued to help, even though we reduced the number of people that were able to come. We were still able to get out into the community and help in our PAL space, which I think was very beneficial, especially as it related to our impact around water sales. Our At Promise Centers, we actually opened a second one, and it too operated under COVID protocols, but it gave us the ability to address some of our citizens, our kids in that community as well. And then our PAWS program, we had one of the most challenging years in law enforcement. The PAWS program is a program that was implemented as a means of helping to address some of the stressors that our officers, and not just our police officers, but some of the people that we encounter into the community. It is well received internally and externally in partnership with the Atlanta Police Foundation. As we work through many of the challenges that we're seeing in policing, many of the larger police departments, major cities, collaborating and having conversation, as we are seeing many of the same things, having some of the same issues. And so we generally get together to collaborate to see what's effective, what is working, what is not working, what we can garner from each other. This past year, we had a visitation from Nashville PD, which was, we both had a conversation about us addressing some of the exact same issues, but it was a great meeting as well. And as many police departments are struggling to recruit and put officers out on the street, the city of Atlanta, even though we have our challenges, are still operating our academy. As a matter of fact, we have a graduation.
Couple of weeks, and we started the class yesterday.
Yes, we started a class on yesterday, so we're still doing exactly what we need to do to get our recruits out. And then our outreach. Again, we know that under COVID protocols, it has limited our ability to have outreach with our community, but we are still doing what we can. The Noonan outreach was us assisting some of the citizens that were impacted by the hurricane earlier this year. The tornado that hit them earlier this year, as well as 2 of our own police officers were significantly impacted by the events there. Slide 5, please. Our key metrics for year 2022, clearly our Part 1 crimes will continue to be significant. Our homicide is what we are continuing to track, our auto thefts, our larcenies, our aggravated assaults, and then our partnerships. We believe that the partnerships will play significant dividends in allowing us to help combat the crime that we're seeing. And then the crime data tracking, which is beneficial not just internally, but externally, as many communities continue to act and to monitor crime themselves. Our community impact, code enforcement and licensing of permits are 2 of the units that really have really been the request of many communities beyond our 911 calls. So we are really paying attention and working with those units to make sure that they have the resources needed to have a more impact on the community as they request. Our technology for 2022 metrics is implementing our new CAD system, processing enhancement, the use of force tracking and being digitized, our public-facing dashboard. We believe that if we have the ability to improve as it relates to our technology, that this will give us the bandwidth to really address the community differently because it makes us a bit more efficient as a department. Slide 6. Slide 6 deal with the matrix, our key matrix of personnel deployment and strategies. We are currently looking at increasing our license and permits unit, and we're re-implementing our repeat offender program. Our repeat offender program really targets individuals that the small portion that continue to come back and victimize people and wreak havoc on our city. We believe that if we can track them better and work with our DA's office and our courts, that will help us in a crime reduction. Our crime scene. We were seeing a number of our crime scene inspectors leave. We knew that we had to beef that up and work with that with pay adjustments. We've able to address that. As I stated earlier, our E911, those working with them, addressing some of the technologies and the pay increases there has really helped us out as well. We're starting to see more people apply for that position. And then the phase 4 pay increases to close out the Mercer study has really been helpful as well. Retention bonuses has clearly really helped us also in challenges with our overtime expenses. Our contract agreements with technology, our leases, our radio system, specialized units, operation, mounted patrol, K9, and our air units. Our helicopters, the maintenance on that has exceeded over $500,000 a year. We are really in need of addressing the helicopter. It's really very beneficial for our department. We're probably one of the only departments continue to use our air unit as much as we do outside of the Georgia State Patrol. We're actually requested to assist in human search out with our surrounding agencies that just can't either have an air unit and it's not maintained the same way, or they don't have one at all. So that is very critical to our operation. Our Microsoft licensing, and then our HVAC repairs. Supplies and other costs and charges, our key contracts, our body cameras, uniforms, and operational supplies. Slide 7. Our key deliverables. The first column is our community impact. Our first tier deliverables are our centralizing of CID. We're currently working to centralize our CID. Currently, we operate in a decentralized where each zone has investigators. We believe centralizing our investigation team will give us a better skill set and much more accountability and more efficiency for a department our size. Street racing. Our strategies and partnership have really have a significant impact on our street racing. We have begun to see those numbers and call for services that relate to street racing decrease. Our police alternative diversion training, which is ongoing. License and permits as we continue to reevaluate how we can improve upon that. Operation Phoenix, our partnerships with our federal partners has played significant dividends as well, as it allowed us to take some of our most violent offenders off of the street. Our community engagement, which we continue to do, even through our COVID protocol, in spaces we thought that we were able to get out in the community, we have done so. Implementing a police town hall. This gives us the ability at the executive level, the chief level, to have conversations with the community, to listen to them directly, to address their concerns, and that has been beneficial as well. We'll have our third relatively soon. Our Community Advisory Board. This is a board where I have conversations with the community leaders to address some of the most the most concerns that hit the city overall. We collaborate on that. They come back with different ideas and thought processes to address those. And then our faith-based quarterly meeting, we've established that where we're talking to some of our larger community faith-based leaders to hear their views and their concerns as well. Our APLI Academy and Enhancement is in our column 2. The City of Atlanta has its own Leadership Institute where we are giving the tools necessary for the next leaders and the upcoming leaders in our department to be equipped to manage at their level as well as prepare them for the next. So we're revamping that program as we do surveys and have conversation with people who are going through our program. It is getting rave review. It is being looked upon not just at, received well just at Atlanta Police Department, but we've had outside agencies request to have insight on it, as well as it being recognized by IACP. Our mentoring program as well. This is where we are mentoring our up-and-coming leaders, and as well as giving us an internal level of stabilization that because we're such a large department that sees a number of transfers, this gives us the ability to give individuals the skill sets so there's no significant gap in professionalism. At our academy, we've actually begun to train on duty to intervene. We've put in a number of different levels of training to address that. Our pursuit intervention pilot program, where we're to help us minimize the need to be in any type of chase. We're looking at different technologies to be able to track vehicles as opposed to chasing those vehicles. We are currently in the process of finalizing our space for our temporary academy. That will give us the ability to move out of the facility that we are in currently, that is, as many of you know, in disrepair. And then we're actually in conversation now at the early stages of establishing our new police academy. Column 4 is the PERF study, Police Executive Research Forum. They are currently reviewing our policies and reviews as well as our training. The ICAT training, which incorporates a level of duty to intervene and de-escalation, we'll be having them come down. We had one phase of trainer. They'll be coming down to do another phase of it, which will be in person. I think that is relatively soon. Our crime analysis enhancement. Many of you know that to be our COBRA meeting. We recognize that it's a bit dated as well. One of the things that we want to be able to do is expand that beyond just what our police officers are doing, that we are, many of our prime locations and problem areas are very systematic and have a long history of us addressing them from a police stance, as well as them being historical in the communities that they are in. And so as we reevaluate what crime analysts are doing, it gives us the ability to address and bring in other entities to help us break up those issues. And then we continue to review on our recruitment and retention, our Office of Wellness, and our interdepartment communication. That concludes my slides and my presentation. You have any questions for me?
Thank you so much, Chief Bryant. And I just want to recognize we've been joined, in addition to Councilmember Shook, Shepherd and Westmoreland. We've been joined by Councilmember Marcy Collier Overstreet, Councilmember Dustin Hillis, Councilmember Cleta Winslet, and Councilmember Michael Julian Bond. If anybody else is here, send me a message and I'll acknowledge you. And I believe that Councilmember Dustin Hillis has some questions.
Thank you, Chairwoman Ide, and thank you, Chief Bryant, for the presentation. I have a few questions across a few different subjects here. The first, of course, you touched on this somewhat, but alcohol and permits. What is new, not a carryover, but what is new in this budget that will help address improvements that are direly needed in alcohol and permits, which we all was revealed to us by the very scathing audit that we saw a few weeks ago. One of the most concerning ones I've seen since the code enforcement audit, which was that ended up getting that unit transferred to APD. So what? I know the answer is more resources, but what is new? Not just, we can go back and fill positions that are vacant, but what's new in this budget that helps address the issues at A&P?
Thank you, Councilman. So we're start off that we are adding 5 new positions to this unit. Additionally, we'll be going to 2 separate shifts. And then thirdly, we're expanding the training to our field officers that will give them the ability to address some of the issues that they see that they previously just were not equipped to address and relied solely upon the license to permit unit to handle. We believe that with this level of expansion, it will give us a greater berth of being able to address the issues that we're seeing, not just at night, but it gives us the ability to handle front desk issues as well.
And of those 5 positions, how many of those are civilian versus sworn?
All of those are civilians.
The 911 center. So I know we have issues with vacancy over there. I don't believe we currently have a director in place, as a civilian director like we usually do since the last one left. Where are we with hiring of a new director?
Absolutely. So we've opened that position up. We are getting some inquiries as it relates to that position. Right now we have a major managing E911. It's going well, as we're clearly seeing an increase in application and hiring as it relates to dispatchers.
Yeah, because this is just concerning because we get a lot of complaints about wait time. I've experienced them a couple times myself when calling 911. No, I believe the goal was 10% within 10 seconds, and I've heard that sometimes we're down to 67% with 20 plus calls holding on the weekend. So I think we really need to focus on, one, getting a civilian director in there and filling the vacancy. Another issue that I just wanted to point out, and this doesn't really relate to the budget, but I've heard there are issues. This is obviously a very high stress job. And there's been requests put in through the leadership to have an EAP visit done. And at least as of about 2 weeks ago, that still had not occurred. I mean, we have EAP that visits multiple departments, including 311, and offer, support for our employees. So that's just something I wanted to put on your radar, and I believe that needs to happen, given the high stress situation that these employees are put in. So can you look into that for us?
Absolutely. We've changed our policy to make sure that we are having even more EAP visits, not just in the zones, but as well as it relates to situations that typically we wouldn't have called EAP out on the most serious types of incidences and calls, that they are responding to those incidents as well. So I will continue to follow up with Dr. Govan to ensure that is being done, but our policies has been changed to ensure that's being done.
Okay. And I know we did pass a
how's it going, Richard?
A much needed wage increase. And, you know, we spend a lot of money in training people for this very high stress job. Has there been any talk of a 2 to 3 year commitment agreement for 911 operators?
No, not for 911 operators. We've not had that. I'll be glad to take a look into it, but that's not been a issue or a conversation.
Thank you. The next question is, I believe it was under the previous leadership when we eliminated our narcotics unit. Is that correct?
Yes.
So, you know, many of us get a lot of concerns about narcotics, and you know, I'm not necessarily talking about low-level drugs and marijuana, but we've had. What comes to mind for me is I've had a lot of issues in parks, English Park, Maddox Park, other places, and we've had to use zone resources to address these issues. But these aren't just someone out on the corner selling marijuana. I mean, there's been a few successful busts and recovered some very hard drugs, and also usually 90% of the time they also have multiple weapons on them. So where are we with? Is that still a move that you support, and not having a citywide dedicated narcotics unit? And using our already stretched zone resources to address these, or is that something that you're evaluating?
So I think it's important that I clarify, because we disbanded the narcotics unit, it actually was just transferred and merged into another unit, which is our Apex unit. We are actually have a 25% increase as it relates to our narcotic warrants. So, and seizures, as it relates to what our narcotics units standalone were doing a year before. So I think people are just used to hearing the term a unit, narcotics unit, but our research, all we did was transfer them into another unit that is actually producing more than when they were standalone.
Okay, well, it's good to hear. Thank you for that clarity. Last subjects and questions, maybe not necessarily relating to this budget, because I think it's been removed, but before your time, someone had the bright idea to, and this has been an agreement for many years, that after a certain number of years, APD would take over maintenance of cameras and LPRs. That was in this budget, I believe, 1 or 2 years ago. And then we discovered that there were many, many cameras down across the city because, again, someone had the bright idea to let APD do the maintenance of these, which we had not had any experience with. It had always been done with APF. So, and there is a proposal out there now to add a whole lot more LPRs and cameras via various, they're asking council members to contribute our TADs, other funds, and I'm certainly supportive of that, but also want to make sure that what we have is up and running. I know I asked about a month or two ago, and there were, I believe, 9, 10 something devices down just in my district. So where are we? Or have we all agreed that this is going to be managed by APF from here on out? And is there any sense that APD has of where we are with maintenance of the devices that we already have, like how many are down on average per day before we go and add, potentially hundreds more devices across the city?
Currently, we're 10% of the cameras being down. That's probably the highest that we've been. in a while. We typically are around 4 to 6% of the cameras now. That 10% could be an increase from some of the ingestion of cameras from the AU Center, which we're still having issues with. We're working with the mayor's office as it relates, and the Atlanta Police Foundation as it relates to how we go forward in maintaining these cameras. But right now, I think going forward with the different technologies as we see with the cameras, the advancement of technologies and looking at the different cameras, we'll see a reduction in that number as well.
Okay, so currently, are all the cameras, are any of the cameras the responsibility of APD, or did they all, in that agreement, revert back to APS for maintenance?
We're still having discussion on how we go forward with that.
Okay, well, I think that's an important discussion to have, and, you know, this council needs to know about before we, you know, throw hundreds or probably millions of dollars more at more cameras that we can't, if we're not sure how we're going to maintain what we have. So I look forward to more of those discussions. And that's all I have. Thank you, Chief Bryant. Thank you, Chairwoman Knight.
Thank you, Councilmember Hillis. Next, we have Councilmember Joy Shepard, our chair of the Public Safety Committee.
Thank you, Chief Bryant. And Mr. Hillis asked some of the questions around the alcohol licensing permit process and LRB. I just want to ask a few more questions. You talked about the fact that you were hiring 5 new positions, and those were civilian positions. But as we saw through the audit, in my opinion, there was a lot of things about the LRB that needed to be changed in terms of the structure of the department and all of that. So you said that you're hiring 5 new positions, and you're actually having 2 shifts changes for you. And that shift change, define what that shift change is for me. And then I want to come back and ask about any other changes you're having in reference to LRB, because I just don't see this as just short of staff. There's some other internal problems with LRB. So I want you to elaborate a little bit on that.
So what we have currently, we have the people that have to come into the office to do the initial paperwork. And what we're actually seeing this year is because of COVID, there was such a significant delay in people being able to process through. And now we're seeing a number of them come back and get their paperwork through. We believe that expanding our office hours as well and giving people the ability to come in beyond just the day shift will have a significant impact as well. It also allows us to have more inspections with the resources, moving some of our personnel to have more inspections during the evening. I think that the piece that will give us the greatest bang for the buck will be us training our officers primarily on the morning shifts that will give them the ability to go into a number of these locations after hours and address them as well. Those will be our greatest changes in that unit, being able to just train officers who typically, as you even stated, they just weren't equipped to address some of the issues that they would see and were reported to license and permits who just didn't have the bandwidth to go out and do it. With this change, our beat officers and some of our crime suppression unit officers will be trained to do it. We no longer have to rely solely on one unit to address these issues.
So let me understand this change in shift for some of the guys that you were talking about who are officers. The shift is specifically to allow them to come in later hours. Does that mean that they also will be going out doing more duties out on the street in terms of clubs and things that are up under their purview? Because from what the audit said, you only had 1 or 2 people who could actually go out and look at things in the evening time. And I heard what you also said about police officers being trained to do all that also. So what else will they be doing? And is there going to be a defined hours in terms of when they can come in, or how is that going to be structured?
Yeah, so the officers that we'll be using to do the inspection will be any time of the day, because we're we're training officers on all the watches. So an inspection at the location can happen at any given time. The office hours will be expanded because of the different shifts. So we're giving them the citizens the ability to come in and we can process more paperwork with the resources that we have.
So, Chief, I'm a little confused. So the folks who are coming in the evening, will they be officers or are they going to be civilians? And having these two shifts, what are their duties? What are they doing? What are they doing?
So the new positions are 5 civilian positions. They'll be able to go out and do the inspections as well. So all of our people will be able to do, the civilians will be able to do the paperwork, will give us a greater bandwidth to address that, as well as the officers having the ability to hit more locations more often than we have done in the past.
So it's going to be a combination of civilians who may be, let's say, like inspectors who would actually be going out.
Absolutely.
And in collaboration with police or whoever, looking at inspections of particular properties and things that just make sure they're in compliance.
That's correct. I'm sorry, ma'am. I apologize. Absolutely. The civilians will be doing the greater band of will be doing more of the inspection.
Okay. All right. Okay, well, I still have some concerns about alcohol, but there were some other things, but we're talking about budget now, and I just want to make sure that we all is on point in terms of that. Now, I noticed that in the budget presentation was pointed out that your salaries, extra overtime is going to decrease nearly 50% or something to that effect, and that was a little that decrease in terms of salary, extra help, and overtime. Now, is that going to be for police officers, or is that going to be for who? Is that going to be the decrease in that? Because as we know right now, we're short 400 officers, and if we're decreasing that, what impact is that going to have on the city, and how is that going to apply in terms of some of the things that we're trying to get done? So is that a fact that we're decreasing overtime? Talk to me about that.
Yeah, we have seen a decrease in our overtime. We're clearly monitoring that very closely. We've put processes in place to try to manage it a bit better, but we do recognize that there will be incidents that may arise as we go into this year. The Peachtree Road race now, which used to be 1 day, will be 2 days, which will require us to have additional resources a day more than we typically would, as well as as the city begins to open back up, we recognize that there will be events that just will require us to utilize overtime personnel.
So my question, I guess, I don't know if you, but I guess let me say it again. A part of balancing the budget this year was it purposely to decrease overtime for us to balance the budget this year in terms of the police department?
Yes.
Is that a part of the plan?
Yes, it was.
So if that's a part of the plan, I'm just wondering how that's going to impact services on the street and how we're going to compensate for that.
Yeah, we'll continue to manage through it. We understand that that's an area of concern. And as we go forward with the processes we have in place and the personnel we have in place, we have a good team to try to manage it. There are a number of things that we've done to help in that space where we would typically put people on mandatory overtime. We've just moved resources to make sure that we have enough resources in place during that time. But it's an area of concern. Okay.
Well, I have some questions. I'm concerned about that also. So we'll continue to talk. The use of force training, which you all are still going through that process, correct? Is there anything in terms of expenses that are coming up as a part of this budget in terms of the changes in the use of force?
Not right now. The training that we're doing is actually already being addressed through our PERF and then our internal training that our personnel receive. So it's not a significant cost that we see.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. That's all I have right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Shepherd. I think next up we have Councilmember Howard Shook.
Yeah, thank you. Good morning, Chief, you and your staff. I just need a little more clarity and a couple comments on the LNP situation. You know, this did not happen on your watch. This is a weakness that you inherited. Hopefully you'll be the one that solves it. But that unit, I think most of us believe, has been, you know, kind of undermanned for as long as anyone can remember. Now, you said you were looking forward to going to 2 shifts. Aren't there already 2 shifts, or was I wrong about that?
No, there's only 1 shift, and they may come in and work, but there's only 1 shift.
Okay. Well, I think putting more people, you know, on the job is helpful. The first thing we need to do is, you know, fill out the existing slots. I know no one's going to withhold funding from you on the council side, because we all know that if you could sort of diminish these hot spots, which tend to coagulate around adult businesses and clubs, you really can drive crime down, particularly in some of our most beleaguered areas. And by the way, you know, I want to salute the people who are on LNP. You know, there was a 5-man unit and only had 1 guy. And so that means they're doing their job, half of somebody else's and half of somebody else's. And so, you know, I'm sure they're working as hard as they can. But if you're it'd be like sending 1 guy out to play another basketball team. You know, you're not going to win. What's in the camera maintenance budget, and how does it compare to prior year?
Currently, we have about $800,000 to $1 million in that budget now. Previously, it was at $1.4 million.
Adequate?
No, we clearly would need more to maintain the ingestion and the maintenance of the camera systems that we have.
Well, what's in the proposed budget then?
Right, 800 to 1 million, 800,000.
Right, sounds like that's something we all need to get our heads together on. I don't know why we would approve a camera budget when we're all screaming about having 1 out of every 10 cameras down, but if we don't provide the funding to do it, then I believe that's on us as well as anybody. How do we help you, Chief, get more funding? How much do you need? Tell us that.
We need the $4 million. We need the $4 million to actually make sure that we continue to have these cameras up and running.
Okay, I smell a budget amendment. In terms of, the Fulton County Prosecutor's Office is under new management. In terms of repeat offenders, are you seeing any material differences in the way, you know, felons might either now be given a real opportunity to get involved in a program or activity, or, you know, failing that, you know, receive a harsher sentence?
Yeah, I've had a number of conversations with the new DA. I think that we're in alignment as it relates to what we can do to address crime. I think this repeat offender unit will really help her, the way that she's had conversations with our department on what she needs to have a solid prosecution. I think that going forward, we will really see an impact on repeat offenders with this unit and her and the new DA.
All right, looking forward to that. That's all I have, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Shook. Next up, Councilmember Marcy Collier Overstreet.
Thank you, Chair. I just have a couple questions because actually most of my questions have been answered, especially the one about, what does the budget look like? Which portion of the budget is addressing the alcohol and liquor licensing permitting issues that we've uncovered with our audit. So I was pleased with your answer with that because, more manpower and more attention paid to it is something that we definitely need to focus on. And I'd also like to know about the gang uptick. What are we doing about that? Like, what in the budget reflects the gang issues that we're having in large numbers? I was recently briefed about an approach to gang issues through a gang database program, and I want to know, what funding are we putting towards getting the gang situation under under control, because it's hard to hear all of the news reports and hear from people about this situation. People are very scared about the gang. So I'd like to know where we are with that. You want to answer that first?
Yes, ma'am. So there's nothing in the budget that will address gangs specifically. That's more internal operations. One of the things that we've done to address gangs is really get back into a number of the partnerships that we previously had and some of the task force to address it. Clearly, one of the things I continue to champion is our Operation Phoenix, which takes most of our violent offenders off of the streets, which generally are gang members. But we are working again with all of our metro partners, GSAC, Fulton County Sheriff's, and Fulton County DA's office to work aggressively as it relates to gangs. Our most recent press conference was about the impact on a gang, where 12 people were arrested and 105 indictments, and there are more to come. So we are working, I think the collaboration of us working differently together and being more in alignment will, you'll see an impact on gangs differently than you have in the past.
Okay. So I've actually talked about this for the whole 3.5 years that I've been on council, because it's important, and messaging is the most important part of it, because if we don't have anything directly stating what our gang approach is, it doesn't resonate with the constituents that we have a gang answer, that we are approaching the problem with gangs in a way that prioritizes safety. So I think that, there should be language in our budget that shows that we are paying attention to and really trying to eradicate gang activity in the city of Atlanta. So that I'm very passionate about messaging, and I think that we should definitely consider having a message about how we approach gangs, because I understand what you just said, and listen, I agree with that. I think we need all of that. We need that plus messaging about the importance of our budget towards combating gang activity in the city. I think messaging is important, and that's just my thought. I also want to talk about the helicopter budget that you mentioned. It just caught my ear when you were speaking about it, and then mentioned that sometimes we have to help other jurisdictions. What kind of contract do we have with that? Like, because they don't have helicopter you know, ability because of the cost. So budget-wise, what are we doing to reciprocate or receive funding? What does that contract look like?
So there is no contract with the surrounding agencies of mutual agreement and support. As they may request us to use our helicopter to find a lost child or a missing person, we may need them as well on emergency matters to assist us on tactical situations, or as clearly as many events that we have in the city, we rely upon them to assist us as well. So it's a level of mutual agreement more so than an actual contract.
So are we tracking how much we spend on that, though? Like, is there a cap? Because there's nothing wrong with having contracts when it's a budget drainer, you know? So I'm just wondering.
No, and there's no, I mean, we do monitor how often, clearly we know how our pilots keep track of how much time they spend in the air, so we can monitor that. But I think that our agreements, our mutual agreements, really it balances out with our need to call upon them as well as their assistance. Because we use other helicopters in our area as well. We rely upon Georgia State Patrol and Fulton County to assist us as well when our helicopters aren't up.
Okay. All right. Well, like I said, it just caught my ear, and that thought came to mind. But again, I want to thank you for just staying diligent and very calm during such a tumultuous time. It just seems that we're always calling on you to make it better. And I know that right now is just a really hard time for everyone, and I appreciate your leadership, and we can discuss more throughout this budget season if there's something that you would like to see us do different or help you in any way. I'm open to that. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Councilmember Overstreet. I don't have anybody else in the lineup, council members. Does anybody else have a question for the chief? All right, well, we are going to close this session out then. Thank you so much, Chief Bryant, and to your team for everything you do and for an informative presentation today. And we will let you know if other council members have questions or have some follow-up to these questions and circle back with you on that. We're going to take 10. Yes.
Sure. My apologies. This is Councilman Dickens. I did want to ask. I'm watching it on Teams meeting. Did we get the presentation? Am I looking in the wrong space for the presentations as a slideshow or PDF that we can have on our own? Because I got my big book, but I don't have that presentation.
I know that I did. If I'll double check that and we'll send out. I think that they were emailed to everybody last night and this morning. I will.
Not the PowerPoint. Not the PowerPoint.
You didn't get the PowerPoint? Okay. I will.
We need to get that.
Yeah. I will circle back with council staff and make sure that you get that in your email.
Okay, great. Thank you. That'll help, be able to mark it up as we go.
Okay. We will do that. All right, it's 10:55. We're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we're going to come back at 11 with Atlanta Fire and Rescue. And I'm going to try to hold each of the time slots that we announced. It just keeps it easier in this remote environment to start everybody on time. And if we finish a little bit early, we'll just take a break and then start back up on the hour, the half hour. So thank you, Chief Bryant, and we will be back in 5 minutes for Fire and Rescue.
Thank you, ma'am.
This is all about love. It's about our health. It's about our community.
Mine eyes have seen the glory of the coming of the Lord. He has trampled out the vision where the lightning and swift sword. He has loosed the faithful lightning of its terrible swift sword. His truth is marching on. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. Glory, glory, hallelujah. His truth is marching on.
I just want to say I love you.
All right, it is 11 o'clock, so we're going to get going again. This is Councilmember Jennifer Ide. Today's Thursday, May 13th, 2021. We are in our second day of the council review of the mayor's proposed fiscal year 2022 municipal budget. At 10 o'clock this morning, we heard from the Atlanta Police Department. We are now going to hear from Atlanta Fire and Rescue, and we have an hour allotted for that, which will include time for council members' questions. I want to welcome our Fire Chief, Roderick Smith, to give his presentation, and ask Chief Smith if you would please introduce your team, and then you can proceed to your presentation.
Yes, ma'am. Can you hear me?
I can.
Fire Chief. And it is my pleasure to come before you to represent the members of Atlanta Fire Rescue today. On the line I have with me to support this collaborative effort our First Deputy, Chief Byron Kennedy, Deputy Chief Glenn Riley, over Field Operations, Deputy Chief Michael Winfrey, who is over Support Services, Deputy Chief Jimmy Giddens, over EMS, Assistant Chief Joylyn Bundridge, running our Aviation Division, Assistant Chief Alan Burton, overseeing our Technical Services Division. And last but not least, overseeing our Fiscal and Administration Division, Ms. Catrice Lott. I would like to start by thanking each of you for allowing me and supporting the men and women of Atlanta Fire Rescue, and to thank our mayor, the Honorable Keisha Bottoms, and the administration for the unwavering support for our great city. To honor your respect for brevity, we'll move right into our presentation for a total of 6 slides. I will present this at the highest level, and we will be prepared to answer the questions that you may have for us at the end. We go to the first slide, please. What you see on the first slide is a summary of our current operations for the proposed 2022 fiscal year general budget, which is nearly $104.3 million. 86% of this represents personnel expenses, which fund salary and benefits for 924 general fund employees out of 1184 total assigned to Atlanta Fire Rescue. The sworn members representing of the 1184, which is 90% thereof, are primarily serving in fire or field operations positions, EMS downtown, as well as the airport. AFRD has 6 divisions of labor, which are grouped into 3 operational areas that we will cover: airport and field operations, the technical services division, as well as our fire administration. The key metrics we will cover, and we will go into a little more detail on slide 3, are the number of incidents that we respond to, the number of fire incidents, our number of EMS incidents, and we track our 90th percentile of first due responses, that's total due responses, for structural fire risk, as well as our EMS risk. Next slide, please. This fiscal year has been rough for Atlanta Fire Rescue, and we've adjusted for this pandemic period, but we are very anxious to move into fiscal year 22 and to continue our progress that we were incurring pre-COVID. For the upcoming fiscal year, we will continue with our capital initiatives and long-term purchases, such as our modular burn building, which will be replacing the 35-year-old structure that we demolished on our drill yard. We will continue with our fleet replacement of heavy equipment, as well as facilities improvements and replacements. We'll also look to focus more on leveraging technology to provide a more efficient and cost-effective service to our citizens, with initiatives such as telestaff to help us oversee our staffing management to include overtime, the utilization of AVL, or automatic vehicle locator, to assist us with dispatching the true closest first responder prepared to mitigate the call, as well as the implementation of smart city concepts like predictive modeling to provide the appropriate services in needed areas, to name a few. Recruitment and retention will always be a priority as we seek to utilize innovative ways to bring the next generation of Atlanta Fire Rescue on board. And as we continue to move forward, we will focus on our future by providing our long-awaited promotion exam for captains and lieutenants, and we will continue to focus on the development of our internal leaders through structured succession planning opportunities. And lastly, we will continue to bolster our past major successes, such as our reaccreditation, the maintenance of our Class 1 ISO rating, and the continuation of the competitive compensation program in partnership with our mayor and the administration. Next slide, please. As you look at slide 3, you'll notice a slight reduction in calls for service that are attributable to the onset of COVID-19 and the abrupt closing of our city. EMS continues to be the largest number of calls for service that the fire department responds to. During this period, AFRD has begun to revisit strategies to reduce the overall calls for service by reevaluating our response to calls such as fire alarms, or alarm bells as we refer to them, non-emergent calls for service, as well as frequent sick calls that should be introduced into the EMS system prior to reaching emergency status. Next slide, please. When we look at the FY22 proposed budget for Atlanta Fire Rescue, you will see an increase or a variance thereof of $7.6 million from our previous year's adopted budget. We'll start at the top with our largest expense, which is going to be personnel services and benefits, which is increasing due to our salary adjustments, offset personnel adjustments and benefits. This is also inclusive of the initiative of the last or the third step for the guaranteed pay raises. Purchases and contracts, you will see a nominal increase to help us align our contractual and operational expenses. This line, you will notice, it includes the Lytics drive cam responsibilities, our medical director's costs, the use of technology such as Target Solutions for distant learning, lease payment for Fire Station 3 up at Phipps Plaza, as well as other technological and maintenance repairs for stations and buildings. In supplies, you will see a decrease to properly align our operational expenditures. This line cost was associated initially with COVID-19 and medical supplies, as well as our uniform allotment. However, we're anticipating that this expenditure will increase as the city opens back up and our call volume tends to rise in relation to that. Our capital outlays will remain pretty much budget neutral, but we are still intending to purchase the replacement modular burn building during this fiscal year that we talked about in our last adopted budget. Interfund for departmental charges, you'll see an increase to align with consumption, as this is aligned with our maintenance of our vehicle, our fuel costs, and our repairs. Other costs will be related to contingency expenses, and we will move to financial uses, which is to increase our budget to manage the cost of our GMA lease payments, which is utilized to purchase our fleet or replace our fleet vehicles. Next slide, please. When we look at the basic operational plan for FY22 for Atlanta Fire Rescue, we have three areas of focus. The first area will be personnel deployment strategies, where we will see a net increase of $5.4 million. This is attributable to, as I mentioned earlier, the increase in sworn salaries, as well as the full funding of 50 sworn vacancies for Atlanta Fire Rescue. The operational changes result in funding of 755 positions, and you'll see the breakout of 693 sworn and 62 non-sworn. Our contracts and agreements, you will see an increase of $309,000. And these contracts represent everything from our promotional exam to facilities contracts, lease payments, and technological repairs and or contracts. And last but not least, you will see supplies and other costs. You will see a net increase there of $2.2 million, which represents a reduction in supplies and capital outlays, but this is offset in other fiscal areas. And it covers things such as station and safety, supplies and equipment, medical supplies, equipment, and more recently, an increase in cleaning and disinfectant supplies for our fire facilities. Next slide, please. So when we talk about our key deliverables and intended benefits to the city, we there again are focusing in three spaces. And the first is our competitive compensation program, which continues the pay increases for our sworn firefighters, which is scheduled to take effect on July 1. Secondly, we look at the full funding of our positions, which will allow us to hire up to 123 firefighters during the course of the next fiscal year. And lastly, we look at the technological advances for fleet and facilities to include the funding of our Chronos and Telestaff, as well as our lease purchase payments for our recruits that are necessary for live burn simulations, as well as working with fleet services to create a more reliable environment for our fire apparatus. This concludes my overview for our proposed budget for FY22. I thank you for this opportunity, and we are now prepared to field any questions that you council members may have about Atlanta Fire Rescue and the future for FY22.
Thank you so much, Chief. I'm going to start with Councilmember Dustin Hillis.
Thank you, Chairwoman Ide. Thank you, Chief Smith, for the presentation. You can probably guess what my first question is going to be in relation to, and that's our AFRD fleet, particularly our ladder trucks. What in this budget allows you to purchase what we need? Because, I mean, even if we approve the money today, they're not going to show up for, I believe you said, 1 to 2 years. And we can't go much longer having 3 to 4 trucks down on some days. So either what is in this budget to alleviate that, or two, tell me what we need to do to this budget to alleviate that. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for the question. So we have begun to address the fleet issue. It is not necessarily a ladder truck issue, because the ladder trucks that we have in our frontline service are all within the service life of the vehicles. It is about the maintenance of our reserve fleet that we need to appropriately address. I am in conversations with fleet services weekly about the reserve fleet to ensure that that reserve fleet is brought up to the necessary standard. This new team has been doing a yeoman's job as they have come in since I took office, and we have been communicating very frequently and regularly, as well as they have taken some proactive actions to make sure that we get the fleet on track and that we can do it with this upcoming budget. It started with them doing an assessment of the reserve vehicles that we have to ensure that we can get them up to 100% operational capacity so that when they are in service, they can meet the needs of our firefighters, as well as planning out the strategy for fleet replacement, which starts with this fiscal year's dollar amount of allocated funds of GMA, which we were given roughly $2.4 million, in which we have ordered 1 engine and 1 ladder to start replacing those. But I have been assured that in the upcoming fiscal years, we will begin to address some of the engines that are now out of their service life to replace those as we move forward.
Thank you. So just so I can get some clarity. So what I see in this budget, on these budget papers, this is for only covering 1 engine and 1 ladder.
Correct, sir. So the way it is, the way we purchase our vehicles, the ladders themselves cost 1.4, and the engines are about 750. And so the way we purchase our vehicles are through GMA funding, which is long-term financing. And so we get that approval through fleet, in which they send it through council to determine what we can and what we cannot purchase. And we are allocated an amount, and we are working to improve or increase that amount in the next fiscal year. But the immediate need is to get all of the vehicles that we have in our reserve fleet up to 100% operational status. And Fleet Services has begun an assessment of those vehicles to include identifying some outside contractors or some specialized contractors that can come in and do the repairs that are necessary for us in a timely manner.
Okay, so with this 1 engine and 1 ladder, those are how far away from appearing at a station? 2 years?
No, sir. Those will roughly be about 12 to 14 months out. The request has been made formally to Fleet Services, and they are placing the order for us. but I can find out where we are in that status and get back with you.
Okay, and do we have anything pending that's going to be showing up any sooner than that?
No, sir. We did not make any fleet purchases on last fiscal year because the GMA funding was halted. So this is us reintroducing ourselves back into our fleet replacement plan.
So has it been longer than a year since we've ordered? Because I do recall a document that I requested from TSLA, and there was something in there as related to causing GMA funding, but it actually showed we didn't purchase any vehicles for, I believe, 2 years.
So the GMA funding year and the fiscal year don't align. So that's kind of tricky space. But I'd be more than willing to sit down with you and show you how that aligns so that you can have a clearer understanding as to how it got off track and what we are doing to put it back on track.
Okay. So is the idea or the priority to still replenish the reserve fleet? Because I believe a number of them are out of service life, and I mean, I've been ashamed to see some of our firefighters driving some of these apparatus down the street.
Correct.
Is that still the priority? And there are, is it 6 engines and 6 ladders in the reserve fleet, or how many are in reserve?
There are 7 engines and 6 ladders in the reserve fleet. And so we cannot address them all at one time. And so the goal is to replace them systematically. But the overarching goal is to make sure that our frontline equipment is equipped and ready to go as we need, and we utilize the reserves when necessary. But we will continue to move forward in replacing those.
Okay. So you said these two are 12 to 14 months out.
Yes, sir.
If we were to, say, come up with money to purchase, 2 more of these or something like that, and you ordered them, I mean, what is the timeline from ordering to arrival?
They are 14 months.
Okay. Okay. Well, I don't know where my colleagues are, but I'm glad we're getting 1 engine and 1 ladder. But just where we've been over the past year, and I know we can't address this all at once, but I think we do need to do a little more than just 1 engine and 1 ladder. So that's certainly something I want to speak with you more about, and we'll seek some feedback from my colleagues as well, whether it comes from this budget or from somewhere else. That's something that I think we need to address soon, especially given the lead time. So with that, I'll defer to my colleagues. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. No problem.
Thank you, Councilmember Hillis. Next up, we have Councilmember Joy Shepard.
Thank you, Chief Smith and Ms. Ide. I have a question, I don't know if it correlates with what Dustin just talked about. We talked about the fire engines and all of that. Yesterday at Finance, we talked about the fact that we're working now on building out a facility out in this Overstreet area that touches South Fulton. That's something that's most definitely absolutely needed. But that facility is not going to be a full active fire station. It's going to be a EMS fire station. And what I learned, and Chief Smith, you can explain it to me and maybe the other folks also more, is that as we talked about this, you and I talked about it, and what you just said in your report is that EMS is one of the highest calls we get in terms of services. And from that, I'm assuming that if we get these EMS calls at this point, most of them are through our fire trucks. But this EMS facility, as you explained it to me, would be one where you would not necessarily use a fire truck because a lot of our calls are not fire related. They're related to EMS calls. And so we use a different type of facility and a different type of truck. So based on what Mr. Hillis is talking about, would that actually help in terms of alleviating some of these problems with the fire trucks? We don't have enough. But if we go to that shift, and you're saying to me that this is the first time we're doing this. Other cities have been doing this because apparently we're getting all cities are getting a lot of EMS calls versus fire calls. But will that help in terms of the workload and the trucks that's needed in terms of fires? Can you explain this? Does that make sense what I just said?
Yes, ma'am, it does. And so definitely it will help with the workload, and as well it will help with the fleet challenge that we have. What the EMS station concept is, it's a smart city concept, and it is utilized on the West Coast, and it would be new to this region. And what it essentially does is it looks at predictive modeling, and we look at historicals and say, where is our call volume and what equipment do we need to do what? And so we have had some challenges trying to address the annex area of the city on the southwest side because fire responses require typically fixed facilities. And so we have no fixed facilities out in those spaces. So what this does is it utilizes a piece of property that the city already owns. It's a smaller footprint, and we built a station that is modular, and it's expandable or adaptable to meet the need of responding EMS appropriate equipment out into those areas, whether they be quick units or we go to an ambulance type service. But clearly on that south side, we have challenges with EMS responses as well as transport. As you all know, that the hospitals are not close in proximity in that space. And so it would allow us to respond to those calls without the use of the fire engines. And so our goal overarchingly is to figure out how do we reduce the wear and tear on our vehicles? And so how do we start reducing the number of calls that the fire department is running? And if so, can we send smaller vehicles?
And that could, I mean, even though this is the first one, do you see going forward that that may be a model that can maybe put somewhere else in the city, and that would help in terms of the number of fire trucks? Again, if you're looking at the percentage of EMS calls versus fires, that's something that you could even think about the future?
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. That is definitely in the future, and we are looking next to move into that Peachtree Battle Corridor to try to see what opportunities. We're just realizing that with the density of the city now, we're having to get very creative in how we provide the services, because when we start looking for land or property for a fire station, once they find out the city is looking at it, then the prices go up tremendously. And so we are trying to look at how do we expand our umbrella of coverage to not only provide the engines that are running up and down the street, similar to like we had the QUIC program before. And so you'll see more predictive modeling, and we'll start drilling down with our assessment and planning team, looking at what is happening in the specific station territories, battalions, and different areas of the city, and specializing services to meet those needs.
Okay, thank you. Another question, how many, in terms of our recruitment, how are we doing with recruitment, rather? Are we up to par where we are with recruitment? And I know at one point, of course, with the fire academy that was closed down, and we're now at the training facilities in College Park. I just wanted to give an update on, are we up to par with that? Is it full blown now? Are we working at the College Park facility? And where are we in terms of recruitment?
Okay, so we ran into some challenges, just like everyone else did with recruitment during the COVID space. And we took the opportunity and following PD's lead, and we've started to revamp how we recruit as well as the recruit turnaround time. We currently have 18 recruits that are scheduled to graduate, I believe, the end of June. We are aggressively recruiting to replace those with a group of 35 as we speak now. And we intend on moving into the temporary training location on July 1st, or June 30th, July 1st.
So that facility is not open yet, but July 1st, is that what you're saying?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. All right. And in terms of, and I don't think the budget has anything to do with the upgrade to fire facilities. That's not in this budget at all. That's just something, that's a side part. Is that in the budget,
yes,
any fire
yes,
facility? Okay. When you're saying yes, ma'am, it is what?
It is a sidebar. It is not a part of this budget.
Okay. Okay. All right. All right. Those are all the questions I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Shepherd. Councilmember Howard Shook is up next.
Okay, thank you, Chief, to you and your staff and your firefighters. I want to piggyback on something that Shepard brought up. As you know, yesterday in Finance Executive Committee, we unanimously approved a funding mechanism that's going to close a long-standing and large EMS gap in Southwest. And indeed, I was around when we brought in all of those new areas, and then on top of that, the population there, as elsewhere, has increased. As you know, and you mentioned the area, there was always a twin gap that's been mentioned for at least a decade in the area you just mentioned, which is an area where, although we've not added new territory in terms of increased density, the area's increased by tens of thousands of people, including probably a disproportionate number of senior citizens. Is there anything in the budget that's going to fund that station?
No, sir, there is nothing in the budget right now to fund that. We were able to move a lot quicker on the one in Southwest Atlanta because the city already owns that property. However, we are working on the plan to come up with a creative space for service in that area. I do realize that it is a vital need, and it has to happen quickly.
Okay. So the last 10 seconds of this conversation could be a loop that might have played at any time during the last 10 years. So I'm going to try to change it up a little bit. Okay. The excuse always is, well, property in Buckhead is really expensive. And that's just a dirty, rotten, dismal fact. It's also a fact that it's going to be more expensive to do it next year than this year. So the city doesn't have property. Okay. We're going to have to pay market and buy some. What's the cost? What's the cost estimate? I'm not going to wait another 10 years, Chief. I apologize.
And that's understood. And I'm willing to work very closely with you because I'm sure.
Budget? What's the budget for that facility, for such a facility?
For facility in that space, roughly for, if we're looking at an EMS station, it's going to be roughly $4 to $7 million. And I know that's kind of a wide spread. But essentially, there are two different types of buildings. Do we go with a permanent construction or you go with a temporary long-term construction? They both have different values. So it's gonna require us to have some discussions about what's going on in the Buckhead area. I duly noted, I've been in some of those conversations over the years about what needs to happen in that Peachtree Battle area. And now that I am in this space, I can tell you that we definitely need to move in that area.
Well, I think we're all in violent agreement that that's what we need to do. I'm looking for a commitment just to act, not to, plan and keep our nose to the grindstone and our ear to the ground and our eyes to the sky and whatever. Let me make a request of you. Could you please go? I know John Lavelle and Properties, working very diligently trying to find a space. I'm guessing the city probably does own some property, maybe in the area. Could you get the facilities people? I don't know who to go to. I assume there are administration officials on this line. Could somebody please send me the current digest of city-owned properties in North Atlanta?
Councilmember Shook, I will get with DEA and identify that representatives, and we will start having those discussions, and I will make sure that we include you in those.
Okay. Give me the data, and I'll get out my magnifying glass and try to help you out. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Shook, and you and I share a boundary around there, and I'd be interested in that information as well. Next up, I believe that Councilmember Dustin Hillis had some follow-up questions.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Chief Smith, all the talk about EMS, showed me to some other questions that we've had conversations about before, and the previous chief. First is at Hartsfield Jackson. We're either have or in the process of hiring some bike EMTs to work at the airport. Where is that right now, and what is their schedule to work?
As it relates right now, we currently have 3 members that have been hired for that bike team. Those positions have been online for, and when I say online, meaning we have been attempting to hire for about a year. What I am doing in the interim is we are reconfiguring how we provide service at the airport, and so we're looking to aggressively put the sworn members back on the bike teams and get them in the concourses. That was a conversation I just had with our airport chief.
Okay, so we currently have 3 members working?
Yes, sir. So what we're finding is that that position is kind of falling in line with the job market as a whole, where everyone is hiring and we are too. And so we're reevaluating to determine why those positions are not as attractive as they should be. It may be salary, it may be scheduling, I don't know. But the hours of operation right now are from 7A to 11P, and they have staggered shifts. And so we're reevaluating the whole bike team concept to try and determine, do we continue down the track of trying to hire civilian employees, or do we bring it back in-house and make it a sworn initiative once again, like it was before?
Okay. And is that built into this budget already, the staffing for that?
Yes, sir. We would utilize personnel that we already have, and it will be an augment between daily staffed individuals as well as providing some overtime opportunities.
Okay, and my next question, which also started, at least my conversations with your predecessor, our firefighters, sometimes 60 plus minutes for good. It's a very well trained EMTs and paramedics, but being an ICU nurse, there are certain emergency times where there's no substitute for a hospital that people need to get to quickly. There was just an incident this past weekend. There was some radio traffic where our police are begging Grady to show up on an interstate to take care of an elderly couple and get them quickly to a hospital. And I know the conversation, I hope that is still ongoing in AFRD, is how, when, and where are we going to start offering transport? Because right now, the people that are responsible for transport have been, are, and if history repeats itself, will continue to be unreliable to get people to a hospital quickly. So where are those conversations?
So the conversations right now are about the service level that we are getting from Grady. There are some uncomfortable conversations that we're having from Grady, but we are setting some clear expectations, and we are attempting to move into the direction of a service level agreement so that we can clearly define what we expect from them and what we need from them. But on the back end, we're also looking at what is it going to cost for us to go into a transport space and determine if it's fiscally feasible for us to do so.
Understood. Have there been any cost estimates as to what that would be?
I do not have one right now.
Okay. All right. Well, I look forward to hearing about how those conversations are going to keep going, and we have to resolve this issue, whether it's the service provider actually providing an emergency service that they're supposed to provide, or, of saying we give up and going our own way. But something has to happen, and it needs to happen soon. So that's all I have now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Hillis. I don't see anybody else in the queue. Colleagues, does anybody else have a question for the chief? All right. I don't see anybody else or here, so thank you so much, Chief, to you and your team for everything you do and for this presentation today. It's 11:37. We're going to wrap things up a little bit early, take a break for lunch, and we will be back online at 1 p.m. with our presentation for corrections. So we're going to go on hold and on mute until then, and we will be back at 1 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you.